Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Golden Ratio Podcast. I am Jen, GR Mom, joined as always by GR Dad.
Hi.
Hi, GR Dad. How's it going?
Coming to you from Tropical Depression Central.
I think it's post-tropical depression. It's a sad state of affairs.
Drippy Fred, I'm going to call him.
This is episode 200. I know.
Amazing.
It's pretty exciting. And it's a no rules podcast.
Correct.
Which is GR Dad's favorite kind.
It sounds crazy to me. Liberation.
Since there's no rules, we don't have to have a cocktail of the week, though we've made a very fancy pitcher of sangria that costs like 3 times what the normal one does. More because we were out of the normal stuff we make it with. But it's delish.
We were forced to upgrade.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah, of course.
So for episode 300...
200.
For episode 300, it's going to be the best episode that we will ever have produced in our whole entire lives. But you're going to have to wait 100 episodes until we get there.
You're going to be stuck with this one for another 2 years.
For episode 200, we thought we would do for all 14 dogs that we've had since we've been doing the podcast, which is a heck of a lot of dogs. Favorite story for each dog.
Okay.
And we'll go in like vaguely chronological order, which means we start with Hops.
Yeah.
You have a favorite Hopper story? My favorite Hopper story is when she was like quite small still, like full on puppy. And I was going to visit my parents. And so I was driving cross country from DC to Chicago. And we stopped, I think in Bryan, Ohio, maybe at the Holiday Inn Express. And I've told this story before, but there was a drunk guy in there when we were checking in. And little puppy Hops comes in, and she was maybe 6 months old.
Fluff ball. She was the fluffiest.
We're getting a little bit lanky, right? The legs start getting long, and she kind of walks in, and he said, "Oh, she has chocolate chip eyes," and except she says, "Oh, she has chocolate chip eyes," and he was totally right. I still don't exactly know what it means, but she definitely has them. It was one of those things where it's like, as soon as you hear it, you're like, "Oh, yes, now I know what that is. That's totally what this is. You don't need to define it," and Yeah, she did. Chocolate chip eyes.
Alcohol reveals the truth.
Good Hopper memory.
Oh. Yeah, I don't have specific memories. I just remember the way she was with Vink. Like super. And then I remember taking her to puppy school with like chopped up hot dogs and cheese in a bag.
Yeah.
And trying to keep her attention while there were all the other puppies and stuff. But she was really good at it.
She's a puppy star.
She really liked the snacks though too. She really liked the snack.
Hey, whatever works.
Chopped up hot dogs.
Yeah, chopped up hot dogs and bits of cheese.
You diehard vegetarian, we're buying hot dogs for this.
I do whatever I have to do. I mean, we eventually had to do the liverwurst in a syringe to get her to come. Squirt liverwurst out of a syringe into her mouth. That was the only thing that got her. And now her recall is so good.
Yeah, because she keeps dreaming of that liverwurst.
Someday I'll get liverwurst again. That was gross, but effective.
She was very easy to train because she wants to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And loves snacks.
Vinkman. Fang.
Oh, I mean, what epitomizes Vink for me? I mean, the chaos.
She's your baby.
She is my baby. She'll always be. We're just saying she's 7, so she would be 49 in dog years, but I don't think that applies to her. I think she's 7.
She's like a first grader for sure.
Stuck in that, but in the joyful way, right? She doesn't care. She doesn't think of it as a limitation. I just like the way she lies in her vent cave and drinks while lying upside down next to the drink bowl without getting up. It just epitomizes, like, she's actually really smart, but she doesn't want to follow rules because she's like, they're stupid. I'm not going to stand up for this. I know I have to. Hoppers will be like, I have to do it right. I have to stand up. And Meng's like, hey, look, I can reach the water. My tongue. She's really good at getting to where she needs to get. She also sits in front of the when I'm sitting on the couch, she sits in front of me and just looks at me with the cutest face, and she knows I will move and give her the good spot by the armrest.
Yeah, and when Dear Dad's not here and I'm in that spot, she doesn't even look at me. She knows I'm not giving it up. I look at her, I'm like, what? No, go someplace else. And she does. But with you, she knows she can win.
She's really smart. She's doesn't follow directions, but that doesn't make her dumb.
My favorite Vink story is when Queso had the foreign object incident. So not all of our followers were probably around when we had Queso. We'll get to Queso eventually. But Queso was 13 when we got her. She made it to like 15 and a half. But I think it was around when she was 14, she stopped eating. And she, it took a long time, but we eventually figured out that she had a few pieces of a few different toys kind of stuck.
Like long skinny pieces.
Yeah. They were kind of stuck in between her stomach and her intestines. So she ended up having to have, she was the original member of Team Foreign Object, had to have emergency surgery. They gave me the stuff they pulled out. I was like, save it for me. I want to dissect it.
That set unrealistic expectations because other vets haven't done that.
There is in the Golden Ratio YouTube archives a video of me dissecting the toy and like going like, oh, this one comes from this toy. This one came from this toy. But she, she was old when she had that surgery and she had a really hard time recovering. She, they kept her at the hospital for like 5 days and she wouldn't eat. And eventually like, well, we'll just send her home. Like they were not very optimistic, but they're like, it's not doing any good for her to be here. And she didn't eat for a bunch more days at home. She did eventually eat, which I'll talk about when it's Queso's story turn. But Vink began her like angel nurse life with Queso, where, poor Queso just felt terrible and she would just lay there and she wasn't super mobile anyway. And Vink would just kind of stand guard over her, lay next to her, stand over her, just like protect. Vink was there. Yeah. And it was really good, like Vink being empathetic to Queso's problems.
Yeah, she definitely feels the vibe, right? It's bad when it's the crazy vibe where like she will emphasize chaos because one of the dogs is nervous and she'll just run around barking her head off at nothing. Yeah. That's bad, but it's good when it's you're feeling bad and I'm going to be very gentle and nice and quiet.
She's very good about that. All right, so Hops and Vink. We got them as puppies, and I had some foster dogs before Vink. So we had Hops, and then we had a few foster dogs, and we got Vink, and then we had a bunch more foster dogs. And then eventually we got Maggie and Jasmine, who came together as a unit. Their owners had moved away, and they just left them in the backyard, and eventually a neighbor found them and took them in. But I think the neighbor like lived in a trailer and had a toddler and like two of their own dogs and just like couldn't also take in these two golden retrievers. So gave them over to the rescue group. And I know I've told the story before, but it's episode 200. We're going to be retelling stuff. We had, I think, a dozen foster dogs at that point, and we would get them and we'd have them for 2 or 3 weeks and we'd adopt them out. We had kept one Goldie, who lived, we adopted her on a Friday and she died on Sunday. I mean, she was old, but it was a surprise. It was a hemangiosarcoma. So, and we knew even before the hemangiosarcoma that she didn't have a lot of time. But Maggie and Jasmine were, I guess, 9 and 10 when we got them.
If that, it might have been 8 and 9, but 9 and 10 sounds right actually. But it's sort of younger, 9 and 10.
Yeah, and they showed up. The guy Art who brings all the dogs to our house showed up, and they went in the backyard, and I was like, uh-oh, these feel like my dogs, and like they've always lived here, and they were like running around in circles with Hops and Vink, and I'm like, now we have 4 dogs, and I was like, I think that night I was like, Ingo, I think I want to keep these dogs. He's like, well, let's give it some time. Well, we've got to keep them for a couple weeks. Let's see. And I was like, and they were so great. I feel like now, I love all the dogs we have now, but we are always going to be chasing Maggie and Jasmine. Frank, the original 6-dog squad was Hops and Vink, Maggie and Jasmine, and then Queso and Riley. And I don't think we will ever have a squad as good as those. The 6.
The vibe was so mellow and relaxed. Like Vink was the most excited of all of them.
Yeah.
And she is pretty mellow compared to what we have now.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Guac.
So Maggie and Jasmine show up. So let's start with Maggie, aka Schmeeg. The song that I used to sing for Schmeeg, which I still sing sometime, was just Schmeeg. She thought that was great, but I used to give her like affirmation pep talks in the snaps, And I still do those for people sometimes. I do them for Stevie sometimes, but we did a lot of like, she was kind of nervous, especially like about thunder.
She was.
And I'd just be like, it's okay, Schmeeg. I am here. I am going to protect you for the rest of your life and everything's going to be okay. And she'd look at me with her big brown eyes and, you could tell she had no idea what I was saying, but she very much appreciated the reassurance. I'd like pet her little head, and yeah.
That was. We designated her as the spokes dog for the gang. She would always be sort of a little in the foreground because she was so Velcro for you.
Always coming right to the camera. Yeah.
Always coming right to the camera, and then we from that we made the next joke, which is she didn't do her paperwork and she's a little nervous.
Where are those reports?
Having to fill in her paper, have to turn in her paperwork, which she didn't do because she always looked a little nervous. She was very concerned about everything. Yeah.
We got them in 2016, I think in very beginning of December of 2016, and Maggie died in April of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So we got Queso after that and Riley after that, but Maggie was the first one of that group to die, and I cried all the time. I would go to Pilates class and I would lay down on the reformer and I would cry for the entire 45 minutes while like my legs are in the little straps flaying around. I still cry if I think about it too much. Not that like I didn't love the other dogs, but she had a very special place for me.
She just appreciated the love so much.
Her and Riley were kind of like my two like soul connected dogs, and they died. We'll talk about him, but he died in October of that same year. And I feel like it broke part of me it's sad when we have lost every single one of them, but those two were the best two dogs I've ever had. And then to like lose them back to back was
untimely, especially. Yeah. I remember Maggie, the one thing about her that I remember that I hadn't thought about for a while is she was, in on the whole getting carrots, right? That was an innovation that we pioneered when we had the four of them or five of them. And I think I was making her roasties at the time too, which I've now been. Oh no,
the roasties came with queso.
Oh, that's right.
She wouldn't eat the carrots, and so we roasted them.
Of course, Hops decided I will only eat roasties because it's best, it's better. But when I used to give Maggie, it seemed like a mob of dogs at the time to have four.
Yeah.
But they would all be sitting there looking to get a carrot, and I'd give Maggie her carrot, and she'd back up away from, like through the dogs, backing up while keeping eye contact with me. She
was a little unstable on her back end, and we eventually got a rug in the spot that she'd stand. So then she could turn around reliably, but she was really afraid she'd fall over. So she'd just like do this back stuff.
Yeah, it was very cute, very predictable and reliable. Yeah.
So Maggie and Jasmine came together as a bonded pair. Jasmine was with us until just before lockdown. We lost her and Queso together in, I think, February of 2020. And she was my favorite dog for a while. She was great.
Yeah.
And
we had the joke that she was the nihilist because she had the face, she had kind of a saggy face, right? Like just like a kind of droopy. She wasn't actually unhappy at all, but you could picture her with a cigarette in the corner of her mouth and a beret on going, these times are terrible. These times, nothing is good.
If you go track down her individual Twitter account, which all of the formerly adopted dogs have, even though I don't post much on them, for a while I was doing a series and it was like black and white, like her face and then a black background and then some like existential quote over it about like the meaninglessness of life.
We will soon turn to dust. The whole concept.
But she was so happy.
She was not like that at all. Yeah.
She'd have like a big, happy, smiley face. And she was the first one who would play like Fling and
that was Fling
around.
Was TM was kind of her thing. Yeah.
So we'd get like a stuffed toy and I would throw it way up in the air and I'd go Fling and she'd jump up in the air and like grab it in her mouth and then shake it around when she'd get down. And but I had to yell Fling. Yep. Your dad would try it sometimes. She wouldn't do it. And I was like, it's because you're not yelling Fling. You got it. And he'd be like, Fling. I'm like, no. Fling.
Yeah, no, I learned. And she was a very happy, joyful dog. She just had the facial expression of like a nihilist. So that was good.
Is that your story, that she's a nihilist?
I was going to do the fling thing too.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Fling was important.
Fling was important.
I'm pouring myself some more sangria
I don't think she ever did anything too crazy. She was also a good dog.
She was an exceptionally good dog. So we had just Maggie and Jasmine for about a year because I was like, 4 dogs. Oh my God, I can't believe we always said we'd never have 3 dogs.
We thought we'd go to 3 and then we went to 4.
But like it was always, we'll foster that 3rd one. We'll never actually have 3 dogs.
Oh, yeah.
And then we instantly had 4 dogs. And then a year later, December of 2018, is that December of 2017?
17,
yeah.
End of 17, yeah.
I get a call from the rescue group and they're like, we've got this 13-year-old. You know, she's lived in the backyard her whole life. And now her owners are retiring and they want to travel more and they don't want her anymore. Will you take her?
God, and there was a picture, wasn't there?
I don't even know if there was a picture.
Yeah, the story.
But I was in Potbelly in College Park and I get this call and I was like, huh. And I called Ingo at work and I was like, hey, Ingo, the rescue group has this 13-year-old. Like, I'm always inclined to say yes. And you have talked me out of some dogs before.
Sometimes.
There have been times where you're like,
the vibe isn't right.
Good idea.
Yeah.
And I was like, so the rescue group wants us to foster this 13-year-old. What do you think about it? Because I can't just sign you up for 5 dogs. And you're like, what difference does it make between 4 and 5? What difference does it make? And I was like, okay, we'll take her.
I think I said, it'll still fit in 2 cars. They'll still fit in the 2 cars.
The thing is, before her, we could have just taken 1 car.
Yeah, well, that was the going from 2 to 4. It was 1 car to 2 cars.
Yeah. Anyway, so we got Queso. She was very, very traumatized when she came to us. So I mean, who knows? She had been obviously not very well taken care of. That's what happens when you lock a dog in your backyard for 13 years. She had a litter mate who she'd lived with. Like, they got 2 dogs when they got her.
Yeah.
And I think the litter mate had died at 10. Queso was 13. So she'd just been kind of like sat in alone after that and just locked in the backyard. Except when it was really cold, then they'd put her in the laundry room. Oh my God. So she came to us and so we had her in Maryland for a couple weeks, and she just laid under the dining room table the whole time.
She was physically weak and banged
Couldn't
up
even stand
too, right?
up.
Nobody ever took her for walks or gave her a reason to exercise or exercise.
Yep.
So she couldn't go up and down the stairs, like even the 3 stairs to the backyard.
Yeah, we had her in the help 'em up harness for a while because we thought she kind of couldn't really walk.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was, which we've had with other dogs, like anxiety and trauma when they come in, and it makes them like physically less capable, and then they kind of settle in and get better. Yeah. But yeah, so she hid in the dining room, and then we came down to the Keys. It was before we bought this house, but we had rented a house. So it was right after, a few months after Hurricane Irma. We had rented this house, and it was giant. I mean, it was like twice the size of the house that we're in
not this
now.
house that we have now. We had a house. Yeah.
Yeah, we rented a house. We had rented a different house that got destroyed in Hurricane Irma, and we were like, what are we going to do? And this guy had a house that he rented us, and it was massive. I think it had like 4 or 5 bedrooms, but there was
2 houses connected.
It was kind of like our house, and then if you imagine like sticking another house kind of on the corner of it, so there's like a little walkway, and then there's a whole other one. That's how big it was. And there was a guest room that we never used for anything, and she would hide in there. We'd have to go look, like, there she is. She's still in there. And we were down there for about 6 weeks.
Yep.
Down there, it's over. We can see it from here, basically. Over there for about 6 weeks. And at one point, it had an elevator, like a real crappy elevator, which she didn't like. And we were kind of carrying her up the stairs or boosting her up.
Boosting her, yeah.
We kind of...
Like a wheelbarrow.
Yeah. She'd do the front legs and we'd do the back legs. And then one day we're down in the yard and we can't find her anywhere. We're looking all over. Where the hell is she? And she was upstairs.
She'd gone upstairs and was like, let me in.
Let me in. And our very last day there, as we were packing up to leave, she and Vink started playing at the bottom of the stairs. Like she kind of chomped on Vink's head. And after that, and at this point, Vink is 3 years old, right? So Vink's like a little puppy crazy. I mean, crazier than she is now. Yeah. And Queso's 13. And they were just like the best pals, where like Queso would kind of like Boots does now, lay on the ground And Vink would like run around and jump on her head, and Queso would
attack her. Yeah.
Butt attack her, and I mean Queso would knock her down sometimes. Like
Queso's this big mountain of a dog, and little Vink is like this little particle.
Yeah, Queso was giant.
Yeah.
But they were great pals, and they kind of played and fought with each other, and just had a great time.
Yeah, surprisingly. Like the Vink, again with her empathy, got the sort of playfulness back in Queso, who was awesome.
Oh, Queso was sort of the first dog where we went, oh, she's aging in reverse. Like she just every year got better and better until the very end. Like the last 6 months, she aged quite quickly.
She started to get a lot of white in her fur and just...
She got vestibular, so her head was kind of tilted, and then she had a hemangiosarcoma. She had a whole bunch go wrong all at once, but up until, through her quinceañera, she just kept getting younger and younger.
We feel good about that. We gave her some really good time, after some crappy life before.
For sure.
So that story, this is what you were going to talk about too, where it's like after the Team Foreign Object, where it was, she just wasn't eating. And that
would not eat.
For some reason, that is a real trigger for me.
You're kind of like a Jewish grandma.
When dogs don't eat, it freaks me out. Like that is the worst thing that can be happening. And it's been the same for all the St. Patrick, all the picky eaters, Parmesan, Riley too, where we had to hand feed them and stuff. I'm just like, I feel so much better if I can get some food in them.
Yeah.
If they eat some food. So it was like a week after the surgery, and Queso just was not eating.
And let me say, we tried everything. We bought out every kind of food in every flavor at like our little Petco. She wouldn't eat it.
Wet food.
Dry food.
I think I've probably
chicken.
tried cat food. I mean,
we did try cat food.
Tried everything. Yeah.
Bacon. I mean, we bought, I kind of bought out the meat section. We made chicken. We had canned chicken, regular chicken, steak,
the chicken
hamburgers,
and rice
bacon.
is usually a go-to
She
for
wouldn't
dogs.
eat anything.
Yeah. And so she, because, they'd cut open her stomach and they cut open her colon, I guess, or what is it?
They just had to cut the stomach.
Just the stomach.
Her,
But, she's an older dog and she didn't like it and she's feeling crappy and she didn't eat. And
for 2 weeks almost.
She's big enough to sustain it. Luckily,
she did lose a lot of weight, but she had some bulk there.
Yeah, but so I just kept trying stuff because it was such an agenda item for me to like jam food in her, and I think I ended up giving her a bunch of Cheez-Its.
Cheez-Its on the food,
and she was just like, "Oh, I like this," and I was like, "Oh my god, Cheez-Its!" So I like put a bunch of food in there and ground up some Cheez-Its and put an egg on it, and she's like, "Okay, all right, I can do this," and then she ate the egg next to the Cheez-Its.
Oh my god, the Cheez-Its.
And then she started eating food, and I sent you like 3 videos of her eating, and I was like, it's happening.
There is also in the Golden Ratio YouTube archives, I'm sure. So we post the podcast on Twitter. We post like a YouTube version. Once we post this, like the next day, I'll go through and post some of these videos because we've got a celebratory video that I think has some fanfare, like ta-da! Oh no, it has the Hallelujah chorus.
I think it has the Hallelujah Ninth Symphonies. Yeah.
Queso eating Cheez-Its. It was so good. That was your real triumph. That was kind of your first kind of dog medical success, because you were real nervous about doing a lot of the medical stuff with the dogs, or that you'd screwed up before, and that was the first one where you're like, I have gotten Queso to eat, like I have defeated this problem,
tricked her into eating. Yeah. No, eating is different than medical. I still have medical gibblies.
You do a good job.
Oh, thank you. But that was and I think Queso to me was a lot of like Schmieg was to you, where I loved Queso. She, like the strength of character she had, she was just so calm and so like kind of doing her own thing by the end, kind of deciding what to do and not to do in her own world, but also interacting with our world.
Yeah.
It was just great. And it was obviously with the backstory and the positive developments. Like when she was here that first winter in the Keys, when she discovered she could lie on her back.
Yes.
And just stay there, because she had just a hugely broad back. It was like a table. But she rolled on her back and and you could just see the wheels turning, where she's like, wow, look at this. What happened? And we have it on video.
There's a lot of good videos.
She's looking around and just upside down going, Whoa.
So Queso has been, so all the dogs pretty much have been rated on dog rates, but Queso got her own independent rating from dog rates with her on her, just laying on her back. Whoa, her tail like tucked between her legs, her just laying there, which was really nice.
Contemplating the world from upside down.
Yep. So we got Queso, and then in 2018, we got Riley, who was 7, and he is one of the few cases, I think he was the first case at that point that we had of a dog that did not have a kind of messed up past. Like he had what seems like a very loving owner. The owner had died.
So it's also tragic, but not the same way as
Queso.
He
had a good life,
yeah.
and had been well loved, and his owner had died kind of unexpectedly, and nobody in the family wanted Riley, so he came into the rescue group.
Didn't like his final wishes address Riley, or wasn't there something?
It was in his obituary. I looked his obituary up, which
yeah.
We're not supposed to know where the dogs come from. Like they don't, all the medical records are redacted and stuff, but I somehow managed to find out and looked up the guy's obituary, and it was like he especially loved his golden retriever. So yeah, Riley had a good life, and he was a really happy dog, and he came in and he had like a messed up tooth. I think he had a tooth fracture. And so we're like, all right, well, we're going to pull that tooth. It's messed up.
Yeah.
So we dropped him off at the vet to pull the tooth, and they did the pre-medical blood work, and they're like, like his kidney values are off. So, who knows what it is? Like, let's put him on these few medicines for a couple weeks and bring him back. And we brought him back in a couple weeks, and they were way off the second time.
Yeah.
And so we ended up going to an internist, and it turns out he had Lyme disease. It was cleared when we got him, so he wasn't like actively sick, like the saucy boy Remoulade. He had active Lyme disease when we got him.
Right.
And a few other of our dogs have. Riley didn't have it actively, but he had Lyme disease in the past. And in retrievers especially, if they get Lyme disease, they can get what's called Lyme nephritis, which is kidney failure caused by the Lyme. Basically, you get the Lyme disease and your body starts producing antibodies, and it can kind of overproduce and keep producing, and then those will clog the kidneys. There is no cure for this. They
just gets more and more
just
clogged.
Die a terrible, long death. And kidney disease basically means they stop eating, they get really tired. And so we had him for 7 months. And he was like great normal dog at the beginning. And by the end, like he came to the live show in Chicago. So that was October of 2018. I remember like going to CVS and being like, what random like cheap wet food, which is always like the most tempting for dogs, like the Alpo canned food, can we get to try to get him to eat? He was eating, like someone had given us chicken pot pie dog snacks.
Yes.
At the live show. People, like we had a whole table of presents from people at the live show.
So nice. Yeah.
And, we were going through all of them, and there was, tons of different snacks. Try this, try this, try this. And he ate those chicken pot pie snacks. So then we bought like 20 bags of the chicken pot pie snacks. But then he'd eat them for like 3 days. And then, by the end, it really was just all we could get him to eat was snacks and then sort of nothing. So he was like, he's this dog that like I connected with in this amazing way. And we thought, oh, he's 7. Like, great, we're going to have him for such a long time.
Totally.
And we had him for, I think, 7 or 8 months.
And he was super charming, and he loved
such a good
you.
boy.
He just was in love with you. And the whole boyfriend meme is partly true because he just was all over you. He was very Velcro-y, but he also he would put his head in your lap. He just,
look at me with his big eyes. And we had all girls, right? Like all the other dogs were girls. So it was always like the girlfriends, the girls. And then we get this boy in, and I was like, oh, it's my boyfriend. Yeah. But he really was my boyfriend.
You dancing with him is like one of the sweetest videos I've ever seen and ever will.
He was sick at that point, but not totally on the way out. And yeah, that video is, I had him in the backyard, and I just kind of, I put my phone on the table and I picked him up. And so I was like holding his butt, and he's got his hands on my shoulders, and we're just like, I was singing him a little song and dancing around. He's my sweet boy.
I think he also exceeded predictions. I think they expected his kidney disease to kill him sooner than it did. I think we got some extra months out of him too. But again, this is the trigger, right? He wasn't eating, so it was just my challenge. He ate milk bones for a while.
The slurry
So
that you made.
I was like, oh, milk bones. Okay, if he likes that flavor, I'll put the milk bones in a food processor and then mix it up with chicken or with dog food.
Chicken juice, like the water from canned chicken.
Yeah. And then I'll just make these nuggets. I make these like meatballs there, but they're milk bone crunch, milk bone dust reconstituted
With chicken juice
in there just to get something in him. And I was feeding him eggs a lot.
I mean, that's where
the hard-boiled eggs started, really.
Hard-boiled eggs with the pictures on them.
Yeah.
Because we'd like do a whole container of hard-boiled eggs and then we draw little pictures of Riley's face on them. But the thing one of the things that I loved most about that dog is that I would be on the couch or even in the bed and I'd be like, come here, boyfriend. And he'd be like, pew! And like dive into the bed, like full body up against me and then like turn his head at me and like look at me with his big eyes. He was like a top-notch snuggler.
Oh, he was. And he was a very charming looking dog too. He had a very charming face. He was very sweet. I miss that
dog so much. I feel like that's really like the other dogs all were old. And so it sucks and it was sad, but I feel like the universe really robbed me.
That was a real emotional roller coaster because it would have been so great if he'd been healthy. He would have been the perfect dog to have for years and years and years and years. And instead we had him for months and months and months. And knew it ahead of time. I mean, we knew that was not fixable. He was going to pass away from those stupid kidneys.
Yeah. Yeah. And we did, we kept him going a lot longer than they thought. But so we lost, like I said, Maggie in April of 2018, Riley, I guess at the end of, middle of October of 2018. And then 2019 was a bad one. I'm sorry, that was 2019 that we lost them.
It was 2019. Because we were here no, not for Riley, but then for the one after,
and so
I would move that we include a discussion of Swizzle.
Oh, Swizzle is next on the list.
Okay, good.
Because so we lost the two of them, and all of a sudden we had 4 dogs.
And it felt like only 4 dogs.
That's right. We had Jasmine and Queso, Hops and Vink. What the heck? Like the house felt very empty.
It was. The sounds were echoing in the empty hallways.
So I was like, need another dog, and was kind of waiting, wasn't getting in through the rescue. And so I was looking at the rescue group, like Adoptable Dogs website. Thanks for the refill, Dear Dad. Mm-hmm. And there was this 14-year-old who was then called Shannon, who we renamed to Swizzle, aka the Swizz. She was up for adoption. And I was like, what is wrong with this dog? Who takes in a 14-year-old to foster them and then isn't keeping them? And so I went through this when I adopt a dog out that we fostered, we put them on the list, someone emails, I bring them to their house. Usually we do the paperwork right there, done. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. So it was like, oh, come meet her at this thing.
No, that's Sizzle. I mean, I'm talking about Swizzle.
Oh, no, Swizzle's the one we adopted. You're talking about Sizzle, who lives with Barb Nelson now.
Oh, the Swizz and the Sizz. Yeah. I mean, Sizzle. I moved that we include Sizzle because you wouldn't have included her normally.
That's true, because we didn't adopt her. All right, well, let's finish the story of the Swizz and then we'll backtrack to Sizzle.
That was feeling the adoption process as the adoptees didn't feel so good. you had put other people through it with the 12 fosters, but being on the receiving end was not so fun.
I just wanted it to be faster.
Yeah.
But so we adopted Swizzle. She was 14. We knew we weren't going to have a long time with her, but she was like a great energetic dog. And
why were they not keeping her? Because she barked a lot, I think.
Right? They were kind of like, she does bark a bit. That dog barked a lot.
She looks at stuff and occasionally barks or something, right? She can't hear.
She was deaf, and we can remember now what a great dog she was, and forget that we were unable to eat dinner the entire time that we had Swizzle.
You had to throw kibble into the corner.
Oh my God. So she would see, so her backstory is that her owner had dementia and was living kind of, somebody should have stepped in a long time before they did, but I think she didn't have anybody kind of close around her, had completely lost the ability to take care of herself or the dogs. So like wasn't letting the dogs out. So the dogs were like doing their business in the house, but the owner was too. Like she had extremely advanced dementia. Wasn't feeding herself, wasn't feeding the dogs. Eventually, I think a granddaughter went over, was like, I need to check on this situation, and it was a real horrifying situation. Got the grandmother into a nursing home, but there were two dogs, Swizzle and somebody else, and nobody wanted the dogs. So they just locked the dogs in the house, and then every 3 days or so, someone would go over and dump a bunch of food on the floor and then leave. So this is not how dogs eat.
It's the worst thing I can think of for a dog. Yeah.
So Swizz, when she came in, so she was about the size of, kind of between Hops and Vink, like an average size golden retriever. She weighed 25 pounds when she came into rescue. So Vink's a little chubby now. Vink should weigh around 60. Hops weighs about 70. She weighed 25 pounds.
She was bones. She
absolutely
must have only been
emaciated.
Bones, yeah.
And then had developed, not surprisingly, a ton of anxiety, especially around food, because she was starved, unintentionally by her owner, who just had dementia, and
right.
The owner was also super malnourished, wasn't feeding herself, but then also, spent, I think, a month or more locked in the house, unable to go out, fed every 3 days. So when we would eat, she'd just start barking. She'd try to get the food, and she would bark at us the whole time. So the way that we managed to sort of eat a little bit is that I'd bring her bowl of dinner out, and I'd throw one piece of kibble at a time across the porch. So she would chase it and go get it, and then we'd be like, om, nom, nom, eat our food. And then she'd come back and start barking, and we'd throw another piece of kibble. For the entire time we had her, that's how we ate.
Yeah, it was, and like the 3 or 4 times where she was asleep when we were eating, we were like, oh, don't wake her. Don't wake her.
Any noise.
No crunching the food. Come, we got to pour some water on these French fries. Yeah, and she loved French fries. That was the thing.
Oh, she loved everything.
Yeah, I know.
She would eat everything. She was a very good dog.
Yeah,
and,
she was a sweetheart too.
Yeah, who knows what she had wrong with her. We do kind of know. So she was getting a bunch of nosebleeds, which we were trying to take care of, and it was sort of getting better. It was getting worse, and then had a really violent episode of them. And I was like, I feel like this is kind of the end. Yeah. You weren't here, but I was
small puddle of blood on the ground when she would wake up
every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this time, I had to spend like an hour cleaning the house. Like there was blood everywhere. Taking her up to the vet, I was like, it seems dumb to put a dog down because they have chronic nosebleeds. At the same time, something's going on and her nose is bleeding all the time. And the vet was so good. And she must have spent half an hour with me just like, do we put her on prednisone and like try to extend it? And how do we do all of, this with all the other medicine that she's on? I don't know what to do. I don't know. I'm just not sure about it. And, it was one of those situations where either thing would have been okay. Right. But she's like, let me go put an ultrasound on her just to see if there's anything else going on. And it turns out she had a big hemangiosarcoma, which made it okay, like a very easy decision. Even if that wasn't directly what was causing the nosebleed, there was a catastrophic thing kind of waiting to happen, which could have been going on then anyway.
It's like a ticking time bomb that will explode at some point.
Yeah, so that's a lot easier than, well, we could try this other stuff and maybe get her another month. This is definitely going to be a thing.
But she was the first one up here, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we got her in Maryland and then brought her here like a week later.
It was after Queso. So she wasn't the first one to pass away up here.
No, that's right. We brought her up here. We had her with Jasmine and Queso.
Right.
They died in February and she died in like July.
Right.
Of 2020.
Right. We got our veterinarian has like they call it an acupuncture room, but it's a room with a little fountain and some
crystals
tapestries and crystals.
Stained glass.
Probably has some aroma sticks that we haven't seen lit.
It's a very nice room.
But it's that kind of meditative room, and that's where they put dogs down, and so you can. So we got way too used to that damn room.
Oh my God!
Like the 5th time we were in there in 2020 was just way too many.
No kidding.
It was so. they do a good job, and it's a very nice gesture, and it's a very good idea to have a nice space for it, where you can say goodbye at your leisure, and they're very respectful and very nice about it.
Yeah.
But boy, you went in there later for acupuncture for one of the dogs, and I was like, I don't know.
St. Patrick, yeah.
I don't think I'd go in there with a healthy dog.
But so this is sad that like my favorite memory of Swizz is actually when she was sleeping and we had ordered takeout, because this is all pandemic times, right? Like early pandemic times.
Yeah.
And we had ordered, so a restaurant started doing delivery that we could get, and we had it.
Yeah.
We had delivery, and she was asleep, and we're like, oh my God, she's sleeping. And so we went out on the porch, and we're like, close the doors, put the blinds down, like, don't let her see.
Right.
And it was like
she couldn't hear, but she could see.
It was the first peaceful dinner we had had. It felt like months.
It felt like months.
Because she slept through it. So her not being present, it's a fun memory of her.
Yeah, she was a sweet dog. Though.
She
got along with all the other dogs, and you know, she was always a good life force. Yeah.
So backtracking to Sizzle,
who I meant before. Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. So we fostered Sizzle before we got Riley. We had a few foster dogs.
Yeah, I think that's right. It was because it was before the live show with all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, Sizzle, and we had Gozer at one point, aka Rose. I mean, there have been other fosters who've come through who we haven't adopted. But Sizzle was a real soul-connecting dog for GR Dad, and I gave her away to Barb Nels.
No, we decided together. Sizzle was one of 3 like rescued from a puppy mill, I think, right? And
I mean, hoarding
we're not even
situation.
Sure that her name was actually Sizzle, because that may have been the name of one of the other dogs, and I think they mixed them up in intake, and this could have been
it didn't matter anyway because
Josie
or
something. Yeah, right. But Sizzle that was a selling point because the name was so awesome.
Yeah, she. I think the Golden Retriever Rescue Group ended up taking, I think, 8 dogs in a couple different batches. We just talked about this on a podcast where, you know, she spent a bunch of weeks in a hospital. They pulled all of her teeth except I think she had 4 teeth, and one of them has been pulled since then, I think.
She looked like a vampire. That was so
vampire.
Cute. Yeah.
Barb recently posted a picture of her eggplants. Sis picked a bunch of her eggplants, and all the eggplants have little hole punches in them from her 4, or now 3 teeth, like jumping in there. God, she was such a good dog.
She's a sweetheart of a dog, yeah.
But Barb had been looking for a dog, and we got Sizzle, and I was like, God, I think this is the dog for you. And it's wonderful because Barb loves her so much.
It was an easy decision once we knew that, because we already had 5 at the time, right? It would have been
she would have been number 6.
Yeah, so I think it was it all came together. We had plenty. We had Queso to as a project, and we knew that she'd be super well loved where she was going. So that was an easy decision.
But when we did the first live show in Rockville, and we will do more, we were going to do one this fall. Like I had been talking to them about September dates, and I just wasn't sure with COVID, which now seems like a good idea.
No.
We'll probably do one in the spring if things are finally stable by then. But we did, so our first live show in Rockville, we had Matt fly out from California, and I think he had another thing, but he and Barb and Sizzle came.
We had 7 dogs.
So they actually were on stage. So all three of them, Sizzle and Barb and Matt, joined us on stage for the live show. So we had the 7 dogs up there. But that was really great that she got to have be with us, and we got to see her again and be a little bit famous because she's up on stage.
You're talking about Barb. Or
I was talking about Sizzle. I think Barb can kind of handle her own.
I don't think she's seeking the limelight.
No. Yeah, she's a good dog.
No, Sizzle's. I still like the updates. She is in a great situation.
Oh, it's so good
situation. For her. It is much better for her than fighting these knuckleheads all the time for space and light.
Yeah, I mean, she totally would have been happy with us, but it's great for her to have more one-on-one attention, which she really gets with Barb.
And we didn't have any squirrels she could chase.
Or murder, which she totally did. She hole punched a squirrel to death. The squirrel got some of her in return. That's with Barb, not with us. So that's his Sizzle.
She's like a I mean,
she's definitely an honorary squad
She was
member.
a near adoption, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we would have kept her. If it hadn't been Barb,
Totally.
right, who I had been talking to,
Totally.
absolutely would have kept her.
Absolutely.
But that, really seemed like, and this is a thing I've said before, right? They tell you when you foster dogs that the dogs pick their houses, which I thought was new age bullshit until I started fostering dogs, and is like totally true. That if you do it right, the dogs let you know, like, this really feels like home, and it's profound and kind of amazing. And with Sizz, at that point we had fostered 14, 15 dogs.
Yeah.
Like I had developed a very good sense for it, and I was like, I know that this is going to work. And it really is just like so perfect.
It just fit. Yeah, it just fit.
Yeah. So that's Sizz, and then we got Swizz.
That's right. This is my confusion.
So I had Sizz and Swizz, and Swizz died, and so we were back down to 4 at that point, hops and
Because we'd lost Jasmine. Yeah, that was
Queso.
from 5 to 4. Right.
So who did we have at that? Yes. Okay. So before we lost the Swizz, which was in July, we took in 2 back-to-back dogs. We've done this a couple times. So we got Guacamole
Knucklehead.
because we had lost Jasmine, and I think Queso was a few days out from dying.
And
And I was talking to the rescue group, and
we just couldn't handle another old dog, like emotionally.
I was, they were telling me about this young dog who needed a different foster home because he wasn't fitting in where he was. And I was like, I'll take him. He's not going to die. I'll take him.
I think that one you didn't even consult with me very much.
No, I was just like, I need a dog who's not going to die.
Because the number wasn't an issue. We were down to
4,
5, but Queso was so on the decline.
Yeah. So we got Guacamole, and
he was a nightmare.
Oh, was he a project? Now he's so good though.
Because he ran away. I mean, that was the worst part, is that he didn't connect with us enough to stick around. Like, he was not a Velcro dog when it counted.
But it's not even like he would try to escape. It's that he'd be like, come chase me if you want me to come in the house.
He still does this with the ball, right? Where he's just like, take this ball out of my mouth. I'll get close, but then I won't let you.
Yeah.
And he loves to be chased, and he thinks it's
was so frustrating.
Funnest thing, but that is the worst thing for dog behavior.
Favorite moment with Guac was at the end of his kind of 10 days of intense training with our good trainer friend Michael Kelly at Old Town Pet Resort in North Bethesda. You guys, if you need your dog fixed, just go talk to him. He's so great. I have plans for Remy to go spend some time with him as soon as Remy's cataract surgery is like done and cleared. He's amazing, and he did such a good job with Guac and really helped us turn that around, where now Guac's recall is excellent. Like, sometimes he'll choose to defy us, but it's rare. And he comes really, especially for me, he comes really well.
Yeah, and for me, he thinks about it for
pal.
a little while, but then he also comes.
He's so good.
And the big change for him is he used to be not treat focused at all. And I don't know what his deal was, but he was not, he just wasn't interested in food. He was so much more interested in the ball and being chased than the food, right? So he didn't come to the food.
He had a lot of what you see in dogs who have just had absolutely no training.
Yeah.
And the rumor, like, he was dropped at a shelter, so he didn't have a name. He didn't have any background.
Right. What was his nickname, maybe?
Meathead.
Yeah, Butthead or Meathead?
Meathead. They think somebody's like, oh, I know the guy who dropped those dogs at the shelters. Who knows if this is true or not? But if it was true, he was on a farm. And I think just an outside dog with like zero
He could just do
anything.
Whatever, whenever.
And when you have dogs like that, I think it's like when you have kids like that. If you have kids and the parents just don't give them any rules or guidance, they're just fucking crazy. And if you just give them a little structure, they're actually really good. Like, they need some structure and some rules.
They love to follow rules, yeah.
And it's like, sometimes they'll break the rules, but they know what they are. Where if there aren't any, they're just like, I don't know what to do. And it's a little bit like untethered. That's sort of what he was like.
Yeah, he wasn't abused, and he looked healthy, and he was in pretty good shape. But you could tell he hadn't gotten a lot of sort of attention. I think that's really the base of it. Yeah, I don't know. My favorite story observation is now with the intensity with which he loves these stuffed
Oh my God.
objects.
So when we got him, I was up in Maryland for work. We got him and Chief Brody
Within,
I think 2 weeks of each other, one or 2 weeks of each other.
those were some of my early grocery trips.
And they were right before lockdown. We got them in February, and Brody was the first week of March.
Did we get St. Patrick before them?
No, we got him in the summer. But we got them right as everything was locking down for COVID. A little bit before, because I was still flying.
Yeah, Brody was when I got the RV too, and it was not. Nobody really had figured out masks. It was sort of early March, I think. March.
It was like March 6th or 7th. Yeah. And we had like one more week, and then everything shut down. But so I got Guac, and so it was just me and Guac, and I think I brought him to like Dogtopia, like for day camp, because I was going to work, get some of it because I was like, ooh, this dog has energy. But when he was at the house, I'd give him the Blauhai.
But the Dogtopia is when he would stand on the crates.
They had like crates for nap time, like full-size crates where the dogs would go for nap time in the afternoon. And he'd get on top of the crates and bark at everybody, which I can absolutely see him doing. But when he was at the house, I'd give him a Blauhai, and exactly like he does now, he'd just have the thing in his mouth, sleep with it in his mouth, carry it around everywhere.
Yeah, snuggle with it.
Absolutely a pacifier for him. So he's been like that the whole time we've had him, like stuffy in the mouth, absolutely just shuts off part of his brain.
Makes him happy.
That's so good.
Makes him happy. I mean, it hasn't changed over the years. Yeah.
No. I mean,
it's adorable. Yeah. Well, but now he's,
Yeah.
He seems older.
He does.
His fur has changed. He's got like little feathers everywhere that he never had before.
Yeah.
He had much shorter fur. Weird.
He's way healthier. A lot. Yeah. I mean, most of the dogs we get haven't had like very healthy diets or vet care or anything. So yeah, we got Guac, and it was 1 or 2 weeks later
that he ate the Brillo pad. Oh no,
we got Chief Brody. So same kind of thing. I was up in Maryland. They brought Chief Brody to me. And we had already bought the RV. So I had bought the RV.
Ordered it. Yeah. You paid for it.
I had paid for it, and we had to go pick it up. And that was GR Dad was picking it up.
I was like, road trip? All right.
And which was its a whole own stupid process. We don't have the biggest recommendation for Camping World in Virginia. That sucked. I was frustrated. I wasn't even there. I was just on the phone with GR Dad.
I think it took me 8 hours to pick up the RV that was bought 2 weeks before or 10 days before. Yeah.
Stupid. Anyway, so Chief Brody, we got then also. So CB was 9 when we got him, and he had very serious allergies, and his previous owners, they overfed him, so he was very fat.
He was. He had a hard time walking too because he was so fat. Yeah.
And he was in the cone for 5 years, and
5 years in the flipping
5 years with a cone on because he was itchy all the time. They did allergy testing on him, and then they just didn't want to pay attention to the stuff he was allergic to. So they had a bunch of kids who would just feed him stuff from the table. They'd feed him all the time, and he's a real beggar. So he gained all this weight, but his skin was infected all the time, so he smelled really bad. So no one would go around him. So he was just neglected.
Probably abused. I mean, verbally abused, right? They probably yelled at him for getting close.
Poor guy. So eventually they just got tired of dealing with it. Thank God. Turned him into rescue. And he was with a different foster home for a few weeks. And then we took him over from that foster home, which I think he actually was up on the adoption page. And I was like, guys, I want this dog. And they're like, but you're fostering Guac. You can't adopt a dog when you're fostering.
That's right.
And they're like, we'll just transfer him to you as a foster.
Can we adopt Guac real quick or do something bureaucratic?
It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
It must have been 1 week later because otherwise we would have just done the Guac adoption paperwork.
Yeah.
You got it foster for 2 weeks. So anyway, we got them back to back. CB has turned into a really wonderful boy with 0 itches. By the way,
he's a sweet boy.
Oh, he's so good.
I just love the way he plays with toys upside down. Right? He's always done this where he puts them in his front paws and kind of pushes them around, and it seems very joyful.
He is. He's a good boy. Like, he's got his anxieties, but he's a good boy.
Yeah, he's very thunder afraid and afraid of being afraid of thunder. So he like hears the rain now and he's like, oh no, I think it's going to thunder. I better freak out. He's got some anxiety issues, but I can't blame him. He had a terrible life.
Yeah. So in July, I think June or July, we got St. Patrick.
Yeah.
Sneaking in here.
He was advertised as a golden doodle, which is, borderline of the great, right?
Yeah. The rescue group will take in mixes sometimes, especially when they're in kind of rural shelters and like need a lot of care, because, it's just hard to get those dogs taken care of. And he was with a really great foster family who we still talk to.
They were so nice. They're like the nicest people. Yeah.
When we had to put him down, we actually Zoomed or whatever, FaceTimed with them, from the vet's office. Yeah. They were really,
but they're the ones who were like, people. He likes cheese. I'm going to give you some slices of American cheese in a little lunch cooler. I think she was a teacher, or
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle lunchbox.
They had little kids, but they did the little lunch sack that was like for ice. I mean, they were so nice, and they loved him so much. But they had a lot of stairs, and he didn't see maybe much at all, maybe not at all, but a little bit. And they had another dog and kids, and it was just a lot.
Hardwood floors, right? He had a hard time standing.
But they went through all the medical issues with him, right? They had the surgery done, wasn't it? No, he bloat, right?
He had bloat, so he was just dumped in the woods, and
they found him after like weeks in the woods.
Yeah, completely emaciated. Somebody just found him in the woods, brought him into the shelter, and the night he got brought to the shelter, he bloated, which means his stomach basically twisted on himself, so he had emergency surgery that night.
Which is very, very likely to be fatal with dogs, right?
Most of the time they die from it, so he's really lucky that he had people around. And I think he went to the shelter, he bloated that night, he got the surgery, and then the shelter gave him to these people. He's the first dog they ever fostered.
And he has like huge surgery scars.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He's all fragile.
They did such a good job with him.
They really did.
He was such a good boy. So, again, he was one who was like, we don't know how old he was, but he was older, very fragile. We knew we weren't going to have him for a long time.
Couldn't see. Might not have heard very well either. I mean, he really was in his own world.
He was. I mean, kind of, I think even independent of the sensory stuff, like he was kind of in his own head. Yeah,
that's right. We thought he might have had some dementia too. It's hard to tell.
For sure. I mean, he had the classic dementia symptom for dogs is that they wander the house at night, which he did with them and he did with us. He'd just get up and walk around.
Oh my God, when we were having the work done, right? The windows replaced. they had laid down paper so they could stomp around in their work shoes without ruining the carpet. And so he would get on the paper and he'd be like,
his little nails would like scratch on the paper in the middle of the night, all night.
3:00 in the morning.
Your dad was very sensitive to that sound.
I think he needs to go out. So I'd wake up and he did not need to go out. He just needed to wander around, poor boy.
The best with St. Patrick is that he loved the wind blowing his ears, and they would he had these big long ears and they would flap in the wind.
I don't know. I have two good memories. You put him in the water once to
I carried him in,
rest his old bones, which is so sweet and so nice.
He loved it.
But he also would, he more than any of the other dogs would dream in his sleep, right? Yeah. He would lie there and be like running in his sleep and twitching and chasing something, which is so cool. In his mind, he was having all these adventures, and he's just this old guy.
Yep. And he just, kind of faded away.
Yeah. He just wore out. But we had some good months with him. Yeah. Yeah.
And
he was also always a struggle to feed. I mean, he was the French fry guy where
we'd buy 11 cheeseburgers at a time.
We went to Burger King and McDonald's and be like, whatever cheeseburgers, just give us 5 of them for today.
Oh my God. We did just cheeseburgers. And then eventually he would sort of eat some food, but not really. And we could tell he was
brats and tots.
Brats and tots
were his thing, yeah.
And he was another one where we would just kind of try everything, but we could tell he was on the decline. And on the last day I made him tater tots, 9 in the morning, I made a fresh batch of tater tots in the air fryer, and I put the plate of tater tots in front of him and he wouldn't eat them. And so we don't know what was wrong, but it clearly, and they won't eat his favorite thing was like French fries when he won't eat the tater tots. It was time. And so then we were down to 5. No, we had Parmesan while we had St. Patrick.
Yeah, we had 7 for a little while.
For a couple weeks.
2, including St. Patrick, which was kind of
St.
what
Patrick
made
and Parmesan.
But St. Patrick was so delicate at the time that it was really hard to have all of them together.
We were hand feeding St. Patrick, and then we got Parmesan in as a hospice case. He had been a breeder dog in Sweden, and then someone in the U.S. had adopted him, and then I don't even remember why they didn't want him anymore.
I don't know, but you looked up the Swedish word for good dog.
Duktig pojke. That's in my brain. Yeah, and so he also had to be hand fed. So we had 2 dogs where we had to hand feed them very messy wet food to get them to eat anything.
Yeah, and the empty cans and the
Oh my God.
slobber and the hand washing. It was a lot of effort for those 2.
It was for a while I was like, this is too many dogs. Like they were all great.
But having the 2 with special
stressful.
needs was really hard because we couldn't keep them around the other dogs because Vink would always sidle up and be like, "Hey, you gonna eat that? I can totally stick my tongue in there."
It was a lot of work with the 2 of them at the same time. Yeah. Parmesan was such a sweet boy, though.
He was like an old Riley or something.
He's another one. I wish. I mean, with so many of them, it's like, oh, if we only of course, getting him as a puppy, but if we had gotten them at like 5,
oh yeah,
right, like we have Remy now. Like if everything is taken care of, he could end up being like a super great boy that we get a lot of time with. Riley, we got him at 7. Parm was one of those dogs where like, oh, if we had gotten him at like 6 or 7, where he's still running around.
Parm was another freaking roller coaster though, because he had that huge growth, like a bowling ball in his tum. Where that was that size. Mostly the reason for the hospice care is because they were like, it's going to rupture, he's going to die any day now. And then we brought him in, and the vet's like, I think we can take this out. It's not, not actually cancerous, and we can probably remove it.
And they did, and he didn't have any cancer.
No.
And then he died 2 weeks later anyway, a month later, I guess.
Yeah. But we thought we were giving him another year, or 70 months was my mantra, or
not
whatever.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, Queso really ruined me on this.
That was Jasmine. She had cancer.
Yeah.
And they took it off, and they said, "Oh, for dogs who have this cancer, if you do successful surgery, they live for 70 months afterwards." So 70 months kind of became the Giardad mantra for a long time.
We didn't get 70 months out of any of the dogs.
No, we did not.
Unfortunately. No, that's the one she had the staples all around her belly, right? Like it looked like she'd been
Jasmine, like a zipper.
Like she'd been cut in half and reconstituted. Yeah.
From like spine to the middle of her tum.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
They got that off though.
Yeah.
But yeah, Parm was a good boy, even though, he did end up being a hospice case. I think we had him for 2 months.
Yeah.
But he was a good one. And then, so we lost him and St. Patrick again, pretty close together, which is a real like universe fucking with you thing to lose 2 dogs. I think we lost them within a week of each other. It was really fast.
It was really bad. Yeah.
And then we got Cheggs.
Yeah, Manchego.
Who was another
insulin.
He was diabetic, and his owners gave him up. His owners were both kind of sick and frail, and were like, we just can't take care of him. And he's sort of a hospice case. And the rescue was like, why is he a hospice case? And we got him, and we're like, oh yeah, he's kind of a hospice case.
Diabetic, and he was blind-ish, mostly.
He was
blind.
totally blind. We tried to get him surgery. He was really totally blind. Like Remy can at least see a little bit.
Yeah, and he had really bad back problems too that were exacerbated. But when we had the whole cart, right?
I mean, he couldn't. He's one of those dogs where he couldn't stand up at all.
Yeah,
if we'd had him
stood
longer.
him up, he could stay standing. I mean, he could do his business. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to take him out, we'd have to pick him up, put him in the cart, put the cart in the elevator, bring him down, wheel him out to the front yard and take him out. Like it was clearly a thing where it's like, well, this is not sustainable for a long time.
Yeah.
But we kind of knew we didn't have a long time left.
Yeah. But it taught me, that was the drive when I picked him up. I had to learn how to use the glucose meter.
Whew, that was...
because they said test him twice a day. And I'm like in the car with a new dog that I didn't know in a rest stop on 95 somewhere between, Florida and
Virginia,
DC.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out, there's no instructions with this glucose meter. There's just a bunch of there's a little strip.
We did not know what we were doing.
There's some poinky thing. So I tried it on myself a couple times.
That didn't work.
It like always showed error. I didn't know how to insert the thing. And meanwhile, poor Cheggs is in the back seat going, I don't know what's going on. And then I had to like try to get blood out of him. It was probably 45 minutes of just super stress for me. And I'm not easygoing about this stuff either. Like medical things and sticking probes and needles into myself or others is not a good thing for me.
No, but you did it.
Yeah.
And
he had diabetes. His blood sugar was high. It said high on the gauge. It said high.
That means literally off the charts.
Yeah. So and that's when I was still, oh my goodness, on the drive. I thought he needed, because I had a diabetic roommate in high school, and he used to get crash. Right, his blood sugar would go way down, and he's like, I need to have a snack. I need to have some orange juice. I need to get some food in me. And I was like, oh well, this is what you do with diabetics. You got to give them snacks. So I was like giving Manchego, the usual pretzels and stuff that
and his blood sugar's going up and up and up.
Give the dog in the back seat. And it was not the right thing to do, yeah.
Hey, he was fine.
He ended up fine, yeah. We managed it pretty well.
He was a sweet boy.
He was a sweet boy, yeah.
It's good we got to see him out.
Yeah, he went swimming too a few times.
Yeah, I carried him in. He liked it. He liked being just held there in the water.
Yeah.
He definitely trusted me. And now we got the new saucy man, remoulade.
Well, we did get Voods in the middle there, too, after...
Oh, fuck, I skipped Voods. I guess Voods and...
No, Voods came after.
We got two back-to-back.
Yeah, but...
Was it Cheggs and Voods one after the... It was Voods and then...
I think it was Cheggs first and then... Oh.
Parm. We got them... We got two dogs at Thanksgiving week apart.
Yeah. I think I got Voodoo before Parmesan.
We got Voodoo, and then a week later they're like, "Will you take this hospice case? 7 dogs?" And I was like, "Sure."
Thanksgiving Thursday that I drove down to get Parmesan. I think
that's right. Yeah. So yeah, we skipped it. Voods, I'm so sorry, Voods. He's just such a forgettable dog.
He's very sneaky, is what he is. He's not forgettable. He's sneaky. He'll wait till you're distracted, and then he'll eat your Kleenex or something.
He was a COVID case where his owners got COVID, were elderly, went into the hospital, and kind of hadn't been taking care of him. And
he was the one who never went outside.
Yes. Him and Parm were doing the same.
Yeah.
Right?
But he had the pink feetses and he was super overweight.
Yep.
No, I got him and he couldn't walk.
I love that pinto bean. He is such a weird ass dog. So strange.
So sneaky.
Really independent spirit.
He is. He's stubborn in a very deflective way. Like not openly defiant. He just like ignore you. He'll look away, and pretend he can't hear you, or he'll pretend to be sleeping, and then when you turn around he wakes up and eats something, he's just...
I like his anger face when you kind of smack him around with something and then he pulls his little lips back and
the not Voods foods thing will never get old. The stuff that he has eaten, because he came to us and they said, he was never outside. He was peeing on pads. But he shreds his beds. He shreds his dog beds. And we're like, oh, well, clearly it's because he wasn't being taken care of. He didn't have the stimulation. Well, he has a stimulation here. He played with guac a lot. And he still sneakily eats stuff he's not supposed to eat. I mean,
the best story is when shortly after we got him, he ate a full sleeve off a hooded sweatshirt of mine.
Yes, that was his Team Foreign Object experience.
I mean, it was like a week. And we bring him into the emergency vet at that point, and I was like, he ate the entire sleeve from this sweatshirt.
From wrist to shoulder.
Yep. They bring him in the back. And so I'm sitting, because it's COVID, right? So I'm sitting in the room with my mask on. And they've got him in the back. And then I'm like waiting. And all of a sudden I hear 3 people cheering in the back. Yay! Because he had
That's
puked
when we knew we
sleeve.
had the right veterinary practice here in the Keys.
That's the emergency vet here is still closed, like trying to find a new location. But it's that vet. And I cannot wait till they open back up again. Yeah. Fortunately, we haven't needed them. But
did they give you the sleeve? I think they might have.
They kept the sleeve.
They kept it. See, that's the new regulations.
They did bring me back at some point to see it, but it was kind of in a few pieces.
We knew what that was. It wasn't like Queso where we didn't know what it was in there. Yeah.
No, that's right. Vood, I'm sorry I skipped over you.
Voods. But he's lost, 20 pounds while he's been with us, right? He was 130. Now he's in the
more
80s.
than that.
Yeah.
I thought he was 83. He was 93 when he got his surgery. And I think he was 115 when we got him. Yeah. So he's
getting better and better.
Yeah, he's doing a good job. So that's everybody. Now we got Remy. And
his story is when I found him eating the tin can, literally the tin dog food can that had little
recycling
punch holes from his teeth where he was eating a tin can. What a doof.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love all of our current dogs, but they're not as good as the original squad of 6.
No, they
Queso,
do have
Riley,
a lot
Jasmine,
of personality, Maggie. Each of them.
They do. They're great, and they sure keep our life interesting.
Interesting is right. When it gets boring, just get another dog.
We're not going to get any more dogs for a while.
When it gets less than super exciting, we'll just get another dog.
Oh, my God. Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. That is episode 200, which basically is Love Fest for all 14 dogs that we've had since we started doing the podcast.
Can people still get Schmieg sounds on Apple,
iTunes?
iTunes?
I think so we released a single on iTunes called Schmieg Sounds, which is just Schmieg making sounds. I don't think it's available on iTunes anymore.
How about boop upon your snoop?
I never released that as a single. That's a podcast episode. Boopity Boop on the Snoop Snoop is a little song that I produced in GarageBand with me singing.
That was good. That had a great beat.
Episode.
You would lay down that beat like nobody's business.
Thank you.
That was good.
I think you can find Schmieg Sounds on Spotify.
And it's basically just grunty noises that Maggie made.
She made a lot of good sounds.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Well, hey, thanks for listening to us ramble for 200 episodes. Yeah. And episode 300 is going to be amazing.
Turns out it took a lot of dogs to get to 200 episodes.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, by the time we get to episode 300, at this rate, we'll have had 21 dogs.
Oh, my goodness. I'll have a long white beard by the time episode 300.
You got any closing words before we sign off, dear Dad?
No, they're all good dogs.
They are.
They're all good dogs. We've done well.
Yeah.
They've given back as much as we've given them.
That is certainly true.
Yep.
Well, until next time, don't bite anyone unless they ask you to.
That's right. Or put them in a wheelbarrow and then pour beer on them and then bite someone's ear off. Yeah.
Don't do the biting.
Don't do that.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.